Okay, the Boston Bruins currently lead the NHL in points. Rangers and Panthers have the best points percentage, but the Bruins lead the NHL in points, very much in the picture, a favorite for the President's Trophy, and nobody believes in them. I'm not saying that I disagree with nobody believing in them or that people not believing in them are wrong, but it's crazy that a team is having as good a season as they are. And Sean said it yesterday. He said Boston people are acting like the Bruins are going to miss the playoffs despite the record they're having. I turned on the radio yesterday. Our executive producer, Mike Felger, is saying to his co host, you know, the Bruins are going to win the President's Trophy. And I've never been more positive a team is going to lose than these guys. And everyone's like, yup. And they don't even sound like they're being haters. The betting odds, they have the fifth best betting odds to win the Stanley Cup. Again, they lead the NHL in points, but they're behind Panthers, Oilers, Avalanche, and Hurricanes betting odds wise to win the Stanley Cup. So let's try to make a little heads or tails of this, shall we?
Yeah, I mean, this was essentially prompted yesterday too, before the Felger thing. There was a tweet that said like the Bruins are on pace to win the most fraudulent President's Trophy of all time, and like I have two schools of thought here, where I sort of land on the side of Mike Felger here, which is wild to say, but like the Bruins might actually be the weakest President's Trophy winners in a long time, where wherein that like I haven't really believed in that team as being a serious, true contender. Like, can they win the Stanley Cup? Sure, any team that makes the playoffs can win the Stanley Cup, but I don't see them as like an Eastern Conference powerhouse. I didn't even in the first half when they were playing much better than they are right now. I think that like this second half post All-Star break has revealed a lot of their flaws and some of been more of an indication of who I expected them to be this year. But like, I don't think that the Bruins should be the ones catching the flack here. Like, I don't think that the fraudulent President's Trophy is a reflection on like a poor reflection on the Bruins. I think it's more a poor reflection on the system. And when we talk about like the changes that I would make to the league yesterday, first thing that I said essentially was the 3-2-1 point system. And so as an exercise here, I went through and looked at what the 3-2-1 point system would give for like standings results. And like, yeah, this is more indicative of where I kind of find the Bruins. And it's sixth in the league, not first. And obviously, like those 15 loser points that they have in the standings have helped them to first under this current format. But like, this is way more indicative of how I would kind of rank the teams in the league right now.
Yeah, I think that's really good work on your part because that also falls in line with the Vegas thing that they're seen as the fifth best team by Vegas. 3-2-1 would slate them as the sixth best team. And would they even be the sixth best team? Because by points percentage there, I'm just looking right now, Carolina would be ahead of them. So they'd really be like the seventh best team. I think they feel to a lot of hockey fans like more the fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth best team in the league. I think a reason that so many people don't believe in them is a combination of PTSD and recency bias. PTSD, obviously, that they were the President's Trophy winner last year and lost in the first round in 7 games to a team that they should have been able to beat, but a team that in the Panthers that ended up making quite a nice run themselves. Recency bias because you mentioned pre and post All-Star break. The Bruins were really, really good pre All-Star break. They've been kind of terrible / sleepy post All-Star break. Sean, you want to throw up that full screen? Look at it right there. Before the All-Star break, fifth in goals for per game, fourth in goals against per game, power play top 5, PK top 7. After the break, 20th in goals for per game, 14th in goals against per game, 25th power play, 14th PK. I think largely the issue has been, and I know that you see that like the PK hasn't been great, the goals against haven't been as good as they were in the first half, but the huge drop offs are in the goal scoring department. So I think that it's really just a combination of they're not scoring goals and they're also blowing leads. If you want to come back, Sean, they're also blowing leads at the end of games like crazy. I think that some of their goal scorers are getting better. We can talk about that in a second, but the two things are they're not scoring. Their goaltending's a little worse. I'm not like freaking out about Olmark and Swayman the way some people are. Olmark's actually been quite good of late. It's the last 5, 6, 7 minutes of games where you're like, holy shit, grow up, you dummies.
Yeah, I mean, they consistently get caved in the third periods, especially down the stretch. And like, it's not like that wasn't really a problem in the first half, too, because in the first half, Jim Montgomery was constantly shortening his bench at the end of games. And that's just, it's not sustainable. And, I think that we're seeing that kind of come to fruition here in the second half is that like they're just not a strong team at the end of games. They just white knuckle it and hope for the best. You mentioned the goaltending that has fallen off. This is largely a team that has been bailed out consistently by goaltending over the past couple of years. Like they've been riding elite level goaltending. If that comes back down to earth, so do the Bruins. So like the scoring. The scoring obviously is a bit of an issue, especially when you're heading into the playoffs where you're going to get matched up against teams that are pretty sound defensively. They can shut you down. So I am worried about the Bruins. I do think that they have their flaws, but I also think that this is a team that shouldn't necessarily be victimized by what happened last year or like fall victim to the PTSD that might come with last year because I do think that they're going to be better off for it. Jim Montgomery is going to be better off for it in the way that he handles the goaltending. I think that he'll be a little bit more in line with the way that he coaches and manages the lineup during the regular season and won't kind of overthink it. And I hope that the players treat the first round this year with a little bit more tact and a little bit more intensity and I guess just like more focused than they did in the second half of last year's first
Well,
round. Sorry.
The thing of last year and getting embarrassed in the first round. This is the 100th time we've said this on the show, but I think it is so important to remind people. Yes, this roster is worse, and now here's where my argument's going to sway a little more pro Bruins. Yes, the roster is worse, but so many teams have embarrassed themselves to death and then come back the next year and won the Stanley Cup. 2018 Capitals, 2011 Bruins. The year before the Bruins won the cup, they obviously got reverse swept by the Flyers in the second round, had a 3-0 lead, blew it, had a 3-0 game 7 lead, blew it. JVR and the gang, those guys are the best. But Bruins bounce back the next year, they win the cup. Capitals 2017, load up. This is the year they're going to go for it. They lose. They come back the next year with a worse roster. They lost Shattenkirk and all those guys. They win the cup. 2019 Lightning got embarrassed so bad. They come back the next year. They win the cup, 2 years in a row. So do not sleep on a team just because they got embarrassed the previous year and their roster might not be as good. Hockey's weird. Panthers, they didn't win the cup, but Panthers a couple years ago win the President's Trophy, lose guys, retool their roster a lot bit, come back the next year, and they make a run to the Stanley Cup final. So I would say the PTSD part shouldn't scare you as much as maybe the recency bias part and what they're doing this year should.
Especially because they're still going to be dealing from a position of strength. Like they're going to have home ice for a good portion of the playoffs. They're going to have some of the matchups that they want. Like obviously I know that both of those things applied last year as the number 1 seed against Florida, but like they're going to take the lessons from last year and still be in a pretty decent position of strength in a weak Eastern Conference that's pretty wide open. So I would not count out the Bruins. I do think that if you're knocking them for being the President's Trophy winners and not being the best team in the league this year, I think that's very fair. I think it's a very fair thing to do. But if you're going to knock like the fraudulent President's Trophy, your bone to pick, I think, is more with the system than it is with the team.
This team can make a run. They're not my pick to win the Stanley Cup, but I think that we've become a little too positive they're not going anywhere. That's the way I'll put it. I don't think they're winning the cup, but I said I don't think. I didn't say I don't know, and a lot of people know that they're not going anywhere, and I just want to lightly push back on that.
We all silly like the mayor.